Welcome to Async. This is Sadia. So, following up from a few things you said in the previous episode, Joshua, Infinity Wells. That is something that I must have read, that Cal Newport book, because that's something that's always been like really top of mind, really present for me as I think about my phone. And I really, for many years now, have been very careful to make sure I don't have any infinity wells in my life. An infinity well, for viewers, is an app that you could just scroll and infinity scroll and scroll and scroll forever, and it never has an end. So Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, things like that. Even Apple News to an extent. So I do have Apple News on my phone, but for me it's not engaging enough for me to want to keep scrolling forever, and I don't really use it so much, so it's not a problem. Yes, so I'm careful not to have those installed. The problem is, now we've got this podcast, and I'm sure that this is a problem that so many people encounter. How can you be a creator? How can you be a podcaster? How can you want to reach an audience, but also avoid these dangerous mental places? And I think that that's a difficult question. I would love to read an ebook or listen to a podcast, that if you have any resources on that, because infinity well, it's always it's a negative thing. Avoid it, right? That's the thing. Just avoid these sorts of things. Don't have them on your phone, or if you do, set strict time limits, that sort of thing. But how can you still engage with an audience and not have that be only a producing content and not sucking it up out of the app? Because the moment you open the app, you're immediately, like, it's designed specifically to show you just the top little bit of a really, really interesting video at the very top of your Instagram feed. Like the first two, they're very, very, very high confidence that you're gonna really enjoy those first two videos. So, and they're just giving you a sneak peek. It's so hard to open Instagram and not scroll up, right, or scroll down. So how do you do that? I've got a couple of tips, actually, a couple of things. One is a great one, which you shared with me, which is to move Instagram into your hidden apps folder. That's a feature in iOS 18. You can long press on Instagram and say require Face ID to open this, and now it's gone from your apps. And then if you need to open it to post a video, you can still find it. You can still access it in the hidden apps section. But that's one huge game changer for me, having Instagram on my phone. The other thing was, and this is a bit more nerdy, I created two shortcuts. One shortcut turns on color filters to black and white, and the other one turns them off. And then I created two automations. One is when I open Instagram, set to black and white mode, run that shortcut, and when I close Instagram, run the shortcut to turn them off again. So now anytime I do open Instagram, it's all black and white, and that actually helps a lot too, I think. And then the third, maybe I should be writing this ebook, the third tip I had on how to use these infinity well applications without falling into the well. I like that. How to use these is, in Instagram, there is a setting that is hide suggested posts for 30 days. It specifically says for 30 days. And so I'm sure those suggested posts will come right on back after 30 days. But if you don't follow anybody and you hide suggested posts, then actually you still get suggested posts. But there is enough on that home screen of Instagram. There's I don't know what it is, your stories, and then people you might want to follow or whatever, that first home screen doesn't have any suggested posts until you scroll, and that just makes a huge difference. So find that Instagram setting and don't follow anybody on Instagram, or maybe do, and then you'll only see a timeline of people you follow, and that's much less of a problem. All right. The other follow-up item was the geography app, and so you've been working on this app, this design. It's looking really good. The things you've shared with me privately in Figma are looking great. I want to see an async Mastodon account, or even put it on Instagram or wherever the heck else we are, of some early prototype mock-ups of this geography app if we're going to build it together. And because it looks really, really good. So the question is, at what point, how do you validate early, right? At what point do you go, okay, this design is pretty good enough to build. Let's build it and get it into people's hands and see how it goes. So when do you do that? Well, whenever you're ready. I think, like, I've seen enough on, this isn't like a direct answer to the question, but I think whatever you've got so far is enough, because I've seen enough of your messages that you've sent me through with previews. So I think it's time to start sharing that with the world. I think people will be kind of interested and excited by this sort of daily geography quiz idea. And I really like the design, so I think the sooner you can get it under your fingers. This is something I learned with Amber Hour, is that I did a lot of the so first of all, Amber Hour is an app that I've built with a couple of friends and family. That it was designed on the screen, right? It was designed in a visual tool completely from top to bottom. Every single part of it was designed before I started development. Yeah, so Amber Hour, and once it was built, many places in the app just didn't feel right as I was playing with it on my phone, and had to end up making a lot of changes to the design because it just wasn't quite right. Again, with Zmanim Pro, same thing. As I'm designing, I throw it on my phone, midway through the design process, right? And this is another advantage of designing in code, is I'm actually touching it with my fingers instead of using it on a simulator. And it makes so much difference. It really, really does make a huge difference to play with something with your fingers. So I think that it's really important with web, not so much. With app development, yeah, it's really, really important. It's like, imagine designing a board game on paper, but like in theory, I mean, and then not playing it until it was finished. You need to get that board game, get the resources, maybe even the artwork. You need a feel for it early on, right? Because it's a different medium. It doesn't work when it's all in your head. And it's the same thing goes. A flat interface is not the same as a handheld one. And it just feels different. And there's things you're going to change. So whatever. I think that this is probably a topic that is talked about by a lot of iOS developers, but it's something I've been recently thinking a lot about. So the answer is, how quickly should you get your geography app built, even if the design's not quite ready or whatever? I think as early as possible. Even if it's just for yourself, even if you don't share it, just for yourself to be able to play with it on the screen. Okay, now the topic that I wanted to talk about today is positive feedback loops. All right, so we're talking about, at the start of the show, we were talking about psychology and how these dark patterns can impact your psychology in apps. Well, like, as an aspiring developer, or as a developer working on something new, there is a long lead time from an idea to a beta, and from a beta to production. There's a huge lead time, sometimes a year, if you really rush it, maybe a few months. And especially if you're just working on your own, it can be really difficult. You hit these valleys of, is this even going to work? Does this matter? Is this just going to flop? Because you're not getting that positive reinforcement. So that's something I'm struggling with a little bit at the moment. I'm really excited about the podcast app that I'm building, Peter, but I'm not getting really much positive reinforcement, other than my wife, who I say, hey, look at this, and she goes, yeah, it's great. It doesn't mean anything coming from you, honey, because you like everything that I do. So how do you get that? Like, how do you, early on in the development cycle, before you have too much to show, when things are still iffy, and when you're not quite ready to take feedback on yet, so you're not actually asking other people what they think, how do you get a positive reinforcement on your work so that you can be encouraged to keep going? Or is there a different way of getting that encouragement? Is there a different way of like maintaining momentum on an app without the positive reinforcement? Keen for your thoughts. I'll see you soon.